sure everything is working as it's supposed to. Right, look like everything looking good. So, yeah, man. This is another one. Good evening, Red fans. Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. Good afternoon, Barbados, Grenada, Jamaica, St. Vincent, St. Croix, St. Kitts, USA, Europe, England. Well, Europe, England, Asia, China, the whole world. Good evening, everybody. We're back. Red is back. And first of all, let me say thanks to all of you who have been encouraging me. I've been meeting a lot of people over the last couple of weeks. And a lot of people have been asking me, what going on with Red? I ain't hearing you. I ain't see you for a little while. You ain't post no video again and thing. And, so I want to say thanks firstly to those people. You all have really been an encouragement. This is not easier. This ain't easy. To do this not easy. Right? So you might see all kind of people posting stuff on YouTube. It's not easy. It's work. Right, but I want to say thanks to you guys who've been encouraging me, because a couple of weeks ago, those of you who have been following the Red journey and who have been part of the Red journey would also know that my family lost our patriarch. We lost our dad. Yeah, I lost my dad a couple of weeks ago. He was 90. He would have been 91 this year, so which is good. You know, the Bible promised 3 score and 10 and a little extra. If you get a little extra, like grace and that kind of thing. So he clocked 90. That's a big achievement by itself. We thank God for that. So he was in a nursing home, and I want to say thanks to the folks at Unforgettable Twilight Years. I hope I'm saying it right. Hope for the Elderly, right in Valencia. Feel free to check them out. That's a Casarina Drive. That's the one right by the health center. They're very close to there, which is good. So I mean, if they needed any kind of emergency, health center right there. But I want to say thanks to them on behalf of my family for taking extremely. My dad was real comfortable. Every time he had no complaints, none. He was the darling in the bunch. They really loved him, and so they took extremely good care of him. Because everybody's big and grown up. All the children have big, grown up, have their own families and stuff. So it's not a case where anybody could have practically moved in with him. And it was difficult to bring him into, the relevant homes based on how everybody's working and all that kind of stuff. Because he needed round-the-clock care at a certain point in time. So we took him there, and they took extremely good care of him. So let me say firstly, thanks to them for taking extremely good care of Daddy. So in his last couple months or so, you could have seen the signs of deterioration of his body. Yeah, what is interesting is several times we had some close calls, and we had to take him to the hospital. Let me take this thing off the screen here. I didn't realize I was still on. So we had to take him to the hospital. And every time it was the same story. He said, but nothing wrong with this man. Some little issue will come up and we'll get real frantic. And I mean, that's human being, we'll rush him to the hospital. But we're not finding anything wrong with the man. There's nothing, he had no heart issue. The heart, for his age, the heart rate was good. The blood pressure was good. 1 or 2 times, minor things, very minor things. Couple pills just deal with that, 2 twos, but nothing major. So that was an interesting phenomenon in itself. So a couple weeks ago, my wife and my son rushed in the studio. My brother posted some pics, and forgive me for not posting pics and video, because the system where I have all that information on was down for the last couple of days, doing some remodeling and refinishing and all kind of stuff. There's the background change, right? Different thing, real simple. But that system was down, so I have all my real files on there, so I couldn't really put that together. But I needed to restart, so we restarted. Anyhow, my brother posted some pics, dad looking real frail and, draw down. And I said, that is it. He ain't have far to go again. Didn't have far to go. That immediately reminded me of a couple scenarios in my life over the last few years, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But he went. By the morning, the next day, my wife and son rushed in the studio one morning. Babe, you see the post? And just the way they came in, I knew it. That's it. Daddy went home. I say, you going now? They say, yeah. So, typical fashion, I bowed my head a little bit, tears, sorrowful. I didn't bawl along the place, but I did cry at that point in time. I cried a bit. And of course, we had to deal with the scenario, right? So, all the legal stuff had to be dealt with. I didn't even know, my brother didn't know, but my elder brother, that's the one who's the pastor, Marlon, himself and I were appointed joint executors of Daddy's will. We didn't even know that. Of course, we wouldn't. We only found out, after, because after he died, he left certain things, and now we had the rights to open certain documents or whatever. And then we found out that we were both executors of the will. So we had to deal with all of that and all the drama in between. But in the midst of that, in our family chats, we would express how we feel about the whole situation, and everybody would have their sentiments to express and all that kind of thing. But a couple interesting things came out. There were times people clearly felt, almost hear my words carefully, right? Almost as if, well, what to do now, kind of thing. And that's a typical thing with people when they lose a loved one. There's usually that point of, okay, what happens now? A sense of hopelessness, a sense of, well, I don't know what to do, kind of thing. And that kind of takes you over. Now, let me dress back a little bit to show you how we come here, why I felt this was important. A few years ago, probably about 5 years ago, if I remember correctly, I lost one of my elder brothers. Now, let me tell you why this is interesting. I am 50. I'm 55 years this year. So for all my life, basically, while there are people that I knew that would have died along the way, when my brother died about 5 years ago, it was the first time in my entire existence somebody that close to me, who is not just a friend but a family member, passed away. Now, we had family members that died along the way. Don't understand what I'm saying? But this is my brother, who I grew up with and spent all my life with, in the same house, eating, eat from my plate, I eat from his plate. At some point we shared the same bed and all kind of different things. This is the first time I felt somebody that close leave me. And that was something to deal with. Goodbye. Listen, man. That was a whole learning experience, because I had to learn about release and let go and a whole heap of different things I had to learn, because I was just like almost like rotting inside, like there's just this big hole, and like I don't know what to do to calm that hurt, to plug that hole, because like it's something like a part of you just literally was just torn out and just like what to do. And so I had to learn some things along the way. Now, prior to that, I was exposed to, I went to a seminar with a friend. We actually went to work. She did photography, I went to do video. And unknowing to me, I don't know if she knew, but one of the topics had to do with this whole thing about coping with death. Now, we could all appreciate death is part of the life cycle. Stranger, death is part of life. But you know what I mean? Death is part of the whole life cycle. But what this particular organization, I can't remember the name, but they basically are run by the Catholic community in Trinidad and Tobago. But they had a facility where if you knew a loved one was close to death, you could engage them, and they would spend time with you and the person who is earmarked for death, to cope with that scenario, so that when it does come, it's not a big surprise, and it doesn't hit as hard. It will hit harder. It will. If you really love the person, don't care how much you prepare, it will hit hard. But if you are prepared, it will not hit as hard. And that's the thing. So they would spend time. I don't know how the whole program, just knew from the little bit that they shared. And it was very interesting. When my brother died, I hadn't put those practices into that knowledge into practice yet. So I was aware of certain things, but I didn't put it into practice. So that when my brother passed, that was like I tell you, one night when certain realities came home, I hope I don't cry during this thing, right? When certain realities came home, I was with my son and my wife. I was driving. At one point, boy, I think my daughter was there because she died a couple years after. At one point, I couldn't take it no more, boy, because we went and visited home where my brother lived. So leaving there to come back home. While they're visiting, I was made aware of certain things that I did not know about my brother prior to that. And boy, that hit like a ton of bricks. And at one point, I couldn't drive. I just pulled aside on the side of the road. And I start to bawl. When I tell you bawl, partners, bawl. Serious bawl along in the car. I start to shake and tremble, all kind of thing. And my family had to console me, and I had to ask them for forgiveness because they are now hearing things about my brother that I couldn't even tell them because I didn't even know. So that left a big, and it was something I had to deal with, the guilt trip and all that kind of thing. You deal with that, you move on. So there was one main thing that stood with me out of what I heard at this seminar, and that had to do with a certain level of acceptance. I think that's the first hurdle we have to cross when it comes to this whole issue of dealing with life after death. And we're not talking about the person who dead coming back to life, reincarnation, reincarnation. Not that. That's a different story. We could trash that the next time. I'm talking about you moving on after the death of a loved one. Because we had to move on. Too many times we hear these stories where somebody died and not too long after, another person died right after them, mainly because of grief. They grieved to death. And you usually hear those stories in husband-wife scenarios, mostly. Sometimes you hear it in parent-child scenario if they're real close, but you mostly hear it husband-wife scenario. But they had to move on. They had to find a way to move on. And part of the reason why people have these challenges is, first thing, they haven't learned to accept the reality of what happened. And when I listened to my family and I looked at some of the posts that they put out with regards to the whole thing, I realized, one, there is the whole idea of accepting what just happened with Daddy. That was a challenge. That's the first thing. You need to accept. That's a big issue in a number of different, which we can talk probably over the next time, right? But we talk more dealing with life after that. So a couple of years after my brother, my daughter died. Now that one, oh God, if you think my brother was bad, my daughter, who was my firstborn. Again, I said, sorry, I didn't have the pics. I really wanted to show you all kind of nice stuff. But she was a gem. She was on her football team in Arima Senior Comprehensive. She played pan. She ended up reaching the States before us, playing pan, playing pan for a church group. She loved sports and, very active and all that kind of stuff. And one of these days I'm going to do a whole episode about her because my daughter suffered with a condition called endometriosis. You can look up the big word. Right? That's a whole journey by itself in how we had to deal with that. She had a couple of operations and all that kind of bad thing. But long story short, I think it was June 15th, 2017. My daughter died in an accident not too far from home. And boy, listen, that wrecked me. My wife now come on and tell me 2016. You see the man thing now, you know the brain does with dates and all that kind of thing. So that's alright, right? So yeah, boy. So I was awakened one morning. I in my back at my studio doing my stuff. I knew my daughter went out. She usually would tell us when she's going out. So I go and sleep as normal. Wake up in the morning. Well, I was awakened by a phone call. Here is Arima police station calling to tell me that my daughter died. Listen, that was. I'm not going to the experience, right? Not now. I want to do that because the anniversary of her death coming up just now, and I plan to do something. But that was a blow. So my daughter died. My brother was at ACU. My daughter, no, my firstborn by Jesus ages. That was my gem. So she gone. Had to deal with that. Here's where this one is a little more interesting. Now, when I first got the news, I borrowed like you know, we just say in China like 10,000. Well, I probably bought like 40,000. My wife jumped up one day. Babe, what happened to it? Told her what it is. Both of us started crying. And my son, of course, he and everything, run in the room, like he kind of figured out what went on, and you know, and just raised us, say, "Boy, Jamie, go on, boy, take it." Rushing, all of us crying and hugging up each other, all that kind of thing. And within a few seconds, it was like a light just switched on, and I was a totally different individual. I went into organization mode. Because immediately, now, between my brother dying and my daughter dying, after my brother, I started to put into practice some of the things I had learned at the seminar. So what I started to do from long before my daughter went was condition my mind as well as hers, and I attempted to condition my wife and son, that we will not always be here for each other. Don't care how much we try to hold on. At some point we have to go. And that's the first thing. We need to accept that fact. We will not always be here for the loved one. They may not always be here for us. They may live before us. And there's no telling how it could happen. So I mentally started to prepare. Someday my daughter would leave. Whether I leave before them, they have to be able to deal with that. So I started conditioning my children to start living without me. Now, this might sound hard, this might sound weird, this might sound strange as a parent. But understanding this whole life-death cycle, I started preparing my children to exist without me. Because I had to be off. At some point I will get off the scene. It could be hard, but that's reality. Too much of us living in too much bubbles. We feel, because we feel things should be a certain way, it's supposed to go that way. No, that's not how life goes, friend. No, that's not how life goes. So I started to prepare them. Listen, we will not always be here. Sometimes they want to do certain things, business-wise, legal-wise, whatever it is. I would always challenge them. I am here as your father to help, but you need to make attempts. Because at some point, look at my phone ringing there. Let me see. Oh, sorry, yeah. Oh gosh, look at my phone ringing. I didn't even realize my volume up, all kind of. I'm supposed to silence my phone. Right, I silence the phone. What I was saying, right? Because we live here, we live, right? We live. So, what I was saying, yeah. So I would at least try it. At least try it, because I wouldn't always be here. I wouldn't always be here for you to run to for help. I mean, while I hear, no problem. No, I give you all the help you could. But I want to get the mindset that daddy will not always be here for my entire life. Chances are you might go before daddy, as in this case. But usually, if things go normal, the parent will go first. So you start preparing yourself to live, to cope, to deal with things without daddy involvement. So when my daughter went, when that whole thing, My mind was already in that space. I've been training my mind long before. Someday she will go. I might go before, but she might very well go before me. And I need to deal with that. And that is what happened right there. That started just kicking one time. Now, it was still a serious thing to deal with. But I saw some of my other family mash up. I mean, mash up bad. But up to now, I have a couple nieces and stuff. Still can't look at pictures of her. Still can't look at videos, past videos of her and all that kind of stuff. But even in the funeral, when I was, the whole dealing with the thing, a lot of people came up to me and they were kind of confused as to how I was dealing with the whole thing. Because I smile on my face and all that kind of stuff. As I said, I'll deal with that whole thing next time, right? But because I had prepared myself for that, it was somewhat easy to deal with. Now, there was still moments in between that life was just... The moving on was hard. I knew I had to move on, but it was still a little bit difficult. And then I met a good friend of mine who told me something. And this was I think this was the breaking point. And this actually made it much easier to deal with a couple other deaths that came after. And I just mentioned about those in a little bit. But this friend of mine, good friend of mine, Anton Doyle, we were talking about the whole thing because when this happened, it was right in the middle of a major production that I usually do every year. It was just like kind of the tail end of that. As the Jazz Artist on the Green. So Jazz Artist on the Green has just completed. So we usually shoot it, we edit the videos and all that kind of stuff. So I was just not in that zone to do anything. And so we were talking. And he said to me, I think it was when his mother died, or someone of his relatives. He was going through a similar scenario. And his doctor told him something. It took me a little while for it to register. But then when it did, that was like heaven open up and just porting. His doctor told him, grieve all you want. That's life. That's natural. Grieve. Please do. Cry. Bawl. Do what you have to do. Wipe your snot. Whatever. Grieve. He said, but don't. Please, please, please don't fall in love with this. I was a little confused first. How are you going to fall in love with something like that? But when I thought it over carefully, here's why. At that point in time, what you're going through is emotional. More than anything else, is emotional. Emotions is what? Feelings. Now, you ever get a sweet scratch? You know what's a sweet scratch? An itch you get somewhere, somehow, sometimes you get it around a cut. After a couple of days, around it pain in you. But something about it still feeling nice. Weird, eh? I can't explain it. I'm not a clinical psychologist. I don't know psychiatrist. So I don't ask me to explain. I just know what happens. Why it happens, we could dig into that. I'm just looking at the facts. And we get what we call a sweet scratch. So, if you touch it, it will hurt. I mean, hurt. But in the midst of the hurt, there's a feeling that you get that you kind of like. So it's like that. In the midst of all the hurt you're going through, something about when your emotions get stirred up, although it's hurting, something about it you kind of like and holding on to. To the point that I actually, when I thought about it, there were times that I'm going through my day normal, but I just wanted to get this feeling, and I would mentally dwell on certain things just to regenerate that hurt so I could feel a certain way. I was starting to fall in love with the thing. I said, nah boy, this thing's serious. I never thought of it like that. You could fall in love with that. And because of that, that will make it much more difficult to come out of this scenario. I hear every so often I hear people talking about, they would have lost their dad, their mom, a brother, a cousin, husband, wife, whoever, and years after They still can't let go. They still can't release. They still. No, this might sound strange, right? They're still wishing that the person was here, which isn't bad in itself. Understand what I'm saying? That's not bad. That's not the thing, right? Of course, I mean, we don't want to lose a loved one. So yes, we're still wishing they were here. But to the point almost that they feel that they can't do anything, because that's the kind of relationship they had. They couldn't really, everything that they did, they had to involve that person. You get me? They had to counsel with that person. They had to call that person for advice before anything. So now that that person isn't here, they don't know how to move forward. They can't make decisions for themselves. So they're wishing the person was here to help them make the decision. You follow what I'm saying? But again, we gotta come back to that point of acceptance. That could never be so for the whole of your life. The person, especially if the person is older than you, chances are they will leave this earth before you. What are you going to do? Life had to move on. So I remember when my daughter died, few people called me and started to express all kind of differently, and people started to talk about legal stuff because essentially, what happened is a truck ran into the car that they were in. Again, we'll deal with that. But they were coming across one way and truck come the next way and hit their car, pitch it, whatever. Based on certain observations, it was felt that the driver of the truck was speeding, and so everybody, people, you could think and go to this one and go to that one and get this evidence and that, and all them kind of different drama, and who's at the court and thing and legal whatever and government and thing to get and insurance and all kind of thing. I say, you see all of that, all the talking there? I have one concern. She dead and gone. I have a wife and a son who is still alive that I had to secure their future and make sure things work in a form that we could move beyond this point. You see all them other little thing all they talking about there? That's not important at this point in time for me. At some point it may be, we deal with that. But right now is about moving forward. So all them other little thing, we don't talk about that now at all. If you have suggestions for me how I can move forward out of this, I all ears. I will buy ears, I will rent ears just to listen to what you have to say. But right now, you see all them other little thing, insignificant as far as I'm concerned. Because I could fight up with all of that, and 2 days after I did, what would have been the point? What would have been the point of all of that? Or maybe my son. Might I lose my son? Because my daughter went first. Something might happen. So after I go through all this big fight up and thing to secure, I'm not losing my son now. What would have been the point of all of that? What is the relevance? And I know people would look at things a certain way, and no problem. That's how I chose to look at it. So priority for me was moving forward. Moving on. We had to move forward. So, fast forward a little bit now. I'm talking about dealing with that, right? In coping with that whole scenario with my daughter, this one, good boy, this one hit me like a. We started to receive all kind of different letters and emails and thing in Dropbox and inbox, and Facebook Messenger and all kind of thing. A lot of people contacted us privately and had glowing kudos about Jamie, who's my daughter, and about us as parents and how we dealt with them, how we brought her up, and a lot of it had to do with how people were observing us from the time they found out about the whole death issue, and they were observing how we dealt with the scenario, to the point that another friend of mine, she told me very confidentially in another conversation we were having, the same night that my daughter lost her life, she lost her stepfather. A stepfather. Stepfather, well, depending on how you look at it. Right? But the family was similar to us, where there were some biological children and there were some stepchildren. Now we grew up like that, but we never used the word step. It was brother, sister, across the board. But nevertheless, so let me use the thing, right? So they lost their dad the same night. But unlike our scenario, what she told me is that the family started to split apart. The family started to separate. People started to blame each other and all that kind of stuff. And she said what brought them back together is she said, look, only watch this family. They lost their daughter the same time, the same night we lost daddy. But watch how they dealing with it. And look how the family get tight. Look at the relatives. And she said that is what her families now started to look at. That was able to bridge that gap and bring them back together. So that's our next piece of nice encouragement for me. In the midst of all the chaos, you might be surprised to know how, what kind of value you could still bring based on how you choose to deal with the situation. Good. As I said, that's what Red is about. It's helping people and, bringing hope and all that kind of stuff. So my brother died last year. So the night of his birthday, he was taken to hospital. That was a next level of drama again. Now, his case, bear with me, right? This one, yeah, boy. This was a unique kind of bond that even the rest of my siblings don't even know and don't understand. But he was my elder brother, but he was also my batch because we trained together. Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and that was a significant thing in itself for a number of different reasons. But I had a unique relationship with him long before that. That I said, even my other brothers don't know and don't understand. But nevertheless, so he died just coming to the close of the year last year. So I already had the experience with Carl. I had the experience with Jamie. Well, by now, this thing kicking in. This information that I had been, this mental preparedness and all that kind of stuff. Because I saw it. So I wasn't really surprised when I heard the news. It was more like a case of, and I want to be careful how I say this, not that I was waiting for it, but I knew it was coming. If you follow what I'm saying, it's not that I was looking out for it, right? Of course, all year along the way, we hoping, we praying, we believing that something will happen, some kind of miracle will happen, something, hey. But still, understanding life and the realities of life, I was mentally prepared. So before he even passed, I had to first accept the fact that he may not come out of this scenario. And that had nothing to do, and I know how some people will start to talk. That has nothing to do with faith. Understand what I'm saying? Yes, I'm believing God. Let's call it that. Let's put it that way. Yes, I'm believing God for a miracle, for some kind of healing. Yes. But I'm also aware of the fact that it may not happen. Simply because I am not responsible for what goes on in your life. Yet, at some point, I could believe in God for you. But if you don't, there's only so much I could do. So I had to mentally prepare myself for the possibility that this may not turn out as much as the way that I am hoping and believing that it will. Just reality. That's just reality. Accepting reality. That's it. So it happened. Kick the bucket, as they say. I dealt with that. Daddy boy. Jeez. Daddy, eh? Daddy. His name was Eric. I need not go further. You hear what I say there? His name was Eric. Eric Ted Ben. My name is Eric. My son's name is Eric. Why? Because he named me after an Eric that he felt was a great man back in the day. I was born 1965. He named me after Dr. Eric Williams, 1962, who he felt was a great man at the time. And of course, he was a staunch PNM, he's a campaign and all that kind of thing. So he named me after that Eric. But of course, his name was Eric. When my son was born, my son was the first grandson from my father's loins. You get me? All the children that my father had, with my mother. As I said, there was step, we had biological and we had step scenario. But between my mother and my father, they had 4 children. And out of all of them, I was the first one that gave him a boy. So I named him Eric in honor of my dad. So that has a whole long emotional thing, right inside it. But long story short, I make the whole run to come back and say this. So daddy passed a couple of weeks ago. And now we had to deal with that. And some of my family are going to hear this for the first time. That was actually the easiest out of all the deaths that went. That was actually the easiest because I was most prepared. We had, as I said, we had several close calls. We had them in the nursing home, that kind of stuff. But you could have seen the signs that the body was deterioration. It was only a matter of time. So as much as I cried the morning, was nowhere close to when Carl died, when Carlton died, when Jamie died. Nowhere close. Because I was really prepared for this one. Because there are a number of signs coming up the road that caused me to be prepared for this. So the final point I want to bring home, ladies and gentlemen, for this to happen, there has to be a level of acceptance, first of all. You need to accept this is just part of the cycle of life. We know it, but we don't accept it. That's the problem. We know it. We know death is something that death exists. We know people die. We know it. But we just can't accept that someday it will happen to you or a loved one close to you. And it's hard to accept. And that I think if we could pass that first hurdle, the rest wouldn't be as challenging. We just need to accept that this happens. Yeah, have faith and all that. Yeah, no, of course, and back it up with your works, because the Bible says faith without works is dead. So don't say you're believing and then you're acting contrary. But at the same time, also be aware of the reality of this thing called life that we exist in. Because I could say, I believe X, Y, Z. Me saying that this doesn't guarantee that will happen. I'm just saying. Right? I just being real. Right? So that is the day. Accept. There is life after death for you. There is life after death for you. As I say, I'm not going on the reincarnation. Forget that. We're not dealing with that. We could debate that if you want at our next time. Right now, I'm talking about you. Can you move on after? Yes, you can. Will you move on? Well, you have to say that. How do you move on? That you now also have to say that. But can you move on? Yes, you can. And you should. Because more often than not, the people watching you and looking at your example, they're looking to see how you cope with it. Because sometimes we're not aware of how strong we appear in the eyes of people. Now, that in itself could be a kind of a mental burden in one sense. Because if you are aware how people are looking at you, and you feel you're not as strong as they think you are, you might tend to put on a show for them. So that's a whole issue by itself. But the fact of the matter is, there are people looking on at you. And they want to see how you cope with it. To see what they could learn to help them to cope with the thing. Yeah? I'm making sense? I think I'm making a little bit of sense. If I'm making sense, tell me I'm making sense. I ain't want to sit down here talking all this thing. What do you like? I want to delete the video. But seriously, folks. There is life after death. Your existence doesn't stop at the death of a loved one. You just need to man up. You need to woman up. Accept the fact this person is no longer here. Forget how life was. When I say forget, get me right. Forget how life was with them. Hold on to the memories, of course. Hold on to the memories. I have tons of them. And every now and then sometimes I just rock back and remember days with Carl, remember days with Carlton, remember days with Jamie. You know, some certain things will click back, certain memories, and I will just smile and reminisce and just enjoy that moment. So keep that, of course, keep that. But the way life was with them is no longer the same. And you need to accept that and move on. Accept and move. Accept and move. Accept and move. There's this little, well, some people call it a prayer of serenity. You know that? God grant me courage to accept the things I cannot change. What is the courage to, something like that, the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference. Yeah, because there are some things you could change. So if you could change it, change it. Make every effort, change it. Make every effort to change it if you could. But you also have to accept that there are some things you cannot change, you cannot affect. Don't care how much you try, it will not bend to your will. That's just the reality of life. So sometimes you just need to accept and move. So folks, I hope somewhere in the midst of all this crazy talk that I was able to give you something of value. So this will be kind of like the new forum of Red going forward. Yeah, we'll do some uploads and stuff now and then. But I want to do more live stuff. Just talk one-on-one in your face kind of thing. And you'll have some interview type stuff happening, and stuff where you can engage me, or you want to send a message. And look, I see people sending messages. I even get a chance to check my the computer. Let me put on my other eyes, right? Let me see what's happening here. So, hey, I see something. Hey, Patrice, what's happening, Patrice? Nice to see you. Ronnie Khan, my boy. Listen, Ronnie has been my probably my number one supporter. Another batch of mine, but probably one of the biggest supporters since I started this thing. Ansel Neves, boy. Yeah, the truth, I like this one from Ansel. The truth is, we really don't prepare for the loss, even though we know it's inevitable. And that's the fact, Ansel. That is exactly what I'm saying. And Ansel is another good friend of mine, also a colleague. In a sense, we both involved in this part of the industry production. He has his full-time job, but he also does this on the side, and we collaborate and work with each other on time. And he had the unfortunate circumstance of losing his wife sometime last year as well. And, you know, we had to deal with that. So he is not talking for the sake of talking. He talking from experience. And that's the thing. We know it is something that is inevitable, but we really don't prepare for it. And that's the thing I'm saying. Ronnie says, great topic. This is one of the hardest things to deal with when someone close dies. That's a very, very solid fact, Ronnie. Thanks very much, guys, for the comments. So, well, I wasn't able to check on Facebook. So when I'm finished, I'll go to Facebook, see what people have been saying, if anything, and, you know, respond to their comments as the case may be. But I want to say thanks to all of you who took the time to join in, to spend the last, how long, boy? An hour, half an hour? Not sure, you know. I didn't check the time, huh? My wife saying 45 minutes. Producer is right here. My producer right there. She off camera, but my producer right in front there. So I want to say thanks to those of you who joined in. I really hope people go back and look at the video and listen to it again. It's an interesting topic. And I think too many things in life, we play ostrich, and we do that and bury our heads in the sand rather than face it. But you can't run from it. There are some things you can't get away from. You just have to prepare yourself to face it and move forward. So, all that said, again, if you're liking what we're doing, if you're finding value, something's making sense, something's helping you, feel free. Well, not feel free, but you know what I mean, right? Like, subscribe, you know, click the notification bell, so whenever we posting stuff, whenever we go live, you will get an indication, you'll get a notice that we live. And by the way, this is our official live spot, 5 p.m. every Tuesday. We here live on Red. Unless something happens that, you know, we have to cancel or postpone, you all would know. If you're following the chats, you would know. You could also find me on Instagram, right? Eric Alvarez. Yeah, Eric Alvarez. Yeah, that's my Instagram handle, right? Yeah, I think it's Eric Alvarez. Yeah, that's me. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of mad thing. Facebook, Eric Alvarez. Or you could even type Varez65. Varez, like Al Varez65. Varez65. That's when I was born, 65. But feel free, please like, subscribe. Shit, look, I'll see if some other people coming in the commenting way. Ansel, thank you. It was the 14th of June. Well, look at that, everybody. Good. So he lost his wife on the 14th of June. I lost my daughter on the 15th of June, a couple years before. In fact, the official day and time of death was 12:15 on the 15th, but the accident actually happened on the 14th. So, Ansel, boy, we have some things to talk about. Kindred spirit kind of thing, in more ways than one now. So, you know, we gotta be there for each other kind of thing, right? But ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. We stop rambling on and close off the people thing and go home, right? So we live again, right here, live at 5, Red Live. I feel like that's a nice name for it, Red Live at 5, every Tuesday. And we could engage each other. And feel free if you have some topics you want to talk about, because we won't be talking things like this. We're going to talk some COVID stuff, because one of the things I want to talk about, and maybe next week, is that whole George Floyd thing, because I see Trinidad now jump in the fray, and I saw some video this morning, I think it is, or some pictures. The boots around the savannah on fire. I hope that was a hoax. I don't know if that was a real thing. But there are some things in that mix that I feel we getting tired with. And there are things I support in that whole scenario with this George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and all that. 100%. But I think there are some things we're doing wrong, and we will actually cause ourselves more hurt in the long run than any kind of help. But we leave that there for now. We'll deal with that in our time. So ladies and gentlemen, that is it for me. Let me get my billboard and everything ready on standby and all that kind of stuff. Right. And yeah. Look out for it. See you next week on Red.